The final goodbye and the beginning of a war. The wind howled through the cemetery, biting through the thick coat Claire had wrapped around herself. She barely felt it. The cold was nothing compared to the weight pressing down on her chest. The weight of grief. The weight of finality. She stood at the edge of the grave, staring down at the casket that held the only parent she had ever truly trusted. Her father was gone. The priest's voice droned on, offering words of comfort that barely registered. Around her, distant relatives sniffled, shifting uncomfortably in the bitter winter air. Beside her, Jason stood stiffly, his face carved from stone. Her older brother had never been good with emotions, but Claire knew him too well. He wasn't grieving, he was waiting. And the moment the funeral ended, as the last handful of dirt was tossed onto the casket, Jason grabbed her wrist, his grip firm. "Claire," he said, his voice low, "we need to talk." She closed her eyes briefly, already knowing exactly where this conversation was heading. "Not here," she murmured. Jason ignored her, pulling her a few steps away from the crowd. "Give me my share of the inheritance," he said bluntly. Claire inhaled slowly, her pulse steady despite the storm rising in her chest. "I don't think this is the time," she said, keeping her voice even. Jason scoffed. "Cut the crap. Dad left you everything, but we both know that money doesn't belong to just you." Claire turned to fully face him, scanning his expression. He wasn't angry, not yet. No, Jason always started with control. He believed he could pressure his way into anything, but he had no idea how wrong he was. "Dad made his decision," she said simply. "It wasn't mine to make." His jaw clenched, his knuckles turning white. "You always were his favorite, weren't you?" His voice dripped with resentment. "Always the good one, the responsible one. And what? I don't get anything because he didn't trust me?" Claire swallowed the lump in her throat. The words cut deep because they weren't wrong. "Dad knew you," she said softly. Jason let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, I bet he did. He knew I needed that money more than you." She stiffened. "Needed?" No, Jason didn't need it. He wanted it. He had always been reckless, always burned through anything given to him. When their mother had passed, she left them both a small inheritance. Claire had saved hers. Jason had spent his within a year. Their father had seen the pattern. And now, Claire was standing face to face with the consequence of his final decision. "You waste," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've always wasted." That did it. Jason's face darkened, his breath sharp with fury. "You'll regret this," he spat before turning and storming away. Claire watched him go, her father's last words echoing in her mind. "Don't trust him with money, Claire. He'll destroy himself with it." A moment of peace, short-lived. 2 weeks later, Claire finally felt like she could breathe again. The funeral had been exhausting, but she had done everything her father had asked. The will was finalized, the house secured, and the estate settled. It was time for a break. She booked a trip to Italy, a place she had always dreamed of visiting. It was supposed to be an escape, somewhere she could process everything, somewhere she could exist without the constant weight of grief pressing down on her. For 3 days, it worked. She wandered through the cobblestone streets of Florence, sipped wine by the river, and let herself feel, really feel, the loss of her father without the chaos of family interference. But on the 4th day, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, expecting a message from a friend. Instead, Jason's name flashed across it. Her stomach twisted. She hesitated before opening the text, dread curling in her gut. "Jason, I've taken Dad's house. Changed the locks. It's mine now." Claire blinked. Then, before she could stop herself, she laughed. Out loud. Right there, in the middle of a quiet cafe, earning strange looks from the tables around her. Because Jason had no idea what he had just done, and she was about to teach him a lesson he would never forget. The dumbest mistake of his life. She reread the text twice, then set her phone down and exhaled slowly. Jason was an idiot. Did he really think changing the locks on a house he didn't own would magically transfer ownership? She took a slow sip of her wine, letting the amusement settle. This was so Jason. Always impulsive. Always reckless. Always assuming the world would just fold around him if he pushed hard enough. Not this time. She picked up her phone and typed a response. "Claire, that's cute, Jason. Let me know how that works out for you." She pressed send and leaned back in her chair, watching the message deliver. Jason had no idea that their father had been meticulous. No idea that the will was ironclad. No idea that the house was still legally hers, and that his little stunt wasn't just stupid, it was criminal. Claire flagged down the waiter, asked for the check, and booked the first flight home. By the time she landed, she was exhausted, but laser-focused. The first thing she did was call her lawyer. "Lisa," Mr. Holloway answered, his tone professional but warm. "I assume you're calling about your brother?" Claire sighed, rubbing her temple. "You assume correctly." "I figured as much," he said. "We received an alert on the house's security system a few days ago. Unauthorized entry. I was waiting for you to return before taking action." Claire wasn't surprised. Her father had planned for this. Everything was set up legally, securely. Jason thought he had taken something. In reality, he had just broken into a house he had no claim to. "I want to handle this smartly," Claire said, pacing her apartment. "I don't want a drawn-out legal battle. I want this shut down fast." Holloway hummed in thought. "You have two options. Press charges for trespassing and theft, or give him a chance to leave voluntarily before we escalate." Claire knew Jason wouldn't leave willingly. But she also knew that letting him think he was in control would make his downfall even sweeter. "Let's give him a little rope," she said, "and see how much he hangs himself with." The first move. That evening, Claire drove up to her house, the house Jason was squatting in. She didn't bother knocking. Instead, she tested the handle. Locked. She rang the doorbell. Nothing. She rang it again. Still nothing. Claire smirked. Oh, Jason. He was actually pretending he wasn't home. She pulled out her phone and dialed his number. Inside, she heard his obnoxious ringtone blaring through the door. The call rang. Rang. Then, finally, he answered. "What do you want, Claire?" She leaned against the doorframe, smiling to herself. "Well, for starters," she said smoothly, "I want my house back." Jason scoffed. "Your house? You mean our house?" Claire laughed. "Jason, I don't know how to break this to you, but legally, that house, the one you're currently squatting in, it's mine." Jason's voice sharpened. "You don't deserve it. That's not up to you," she said coolly. "Now, I'm giving you one chance to leave before I bring the law into this." Silence. Then, a slow, mocking chuckle. "Yeah? And what exactly are you going to do, little sister? Call the cops?" Claire's smile widened. "You want to bet? Taking back what's mine." The streetlights cast long shadows over the driveway as Claire pulled up in front of her house, the house Jason had so boldly decided to steal. She sat in her car for a moment, letting the tension settle over her like a second skin. Jason thought he had won. He thought changing the locks and sending a cocky text was enough to erase reality. But he had no idea what was coming. Claire inhaled deeply, then stepped out of the car, heels clicking against the pavement. She wasn't here to beg or argue. She was here to end this. The knock that said it all, Maeve. She approached the front door, testing the handle out of curiosity. Locked. She expected that. But she wasn't leaving without making her presence known. Claire lifted her hand and knocked. Loud and firm. Silence. Then, after a long moment, a slight shuffle from inside. She knocked again. Still nothing. She smirked. "Oh, Jason." "Open the door," she called, crossing her arms. "We both know you're in there." More silence. She knocked again, harder this time, rattling the frame. A moment later, her phone vibrated in her pocket. "Jason." "Go away, Claire." Her smirk widened. She typed back. "Come outside and say that to my face." Another pause. Then, "I don't have to. This house is mine now. You lost." Claire exhaled, shaking her head. He really thought this was a game. Her phone buzzed again. "Why don't you do us both a favor and accept it?" "Dad isn't here to clean up after you anymore." Claire clenched her jaw. She took a breath, letting the anger pass. Jason was poking at old wounds, hoping she'd react. But she wasn't here to play his game. She was here to win. She stepped back, pulled out her phone, and made a call. The moment the other line picked up, she said smoothly, "Let's do it." The legal checkmate. The next morning, Claire was back. And this time, she wasn't alone. A locksmith van pulled into the driveway beside her car. The driver stepped out, clipboard in hand. "Lisa Walker?" "That's me," he nodded, flipping through some paperwork. "We got confirmation of ownership this morning. We'll get started right away." Claire turned toward the house, arms crossed, waiting. A few minutes passed. Then, the front door flew open. Jason stood in the doorway, face red, rage burning in his eyes. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Claire smiled. "Changing the locks, since you changed them without permission." His hands curled into fists. You can't just, oh, but I can, she cut in smoothly. Because I own this house, Jason. You don't. His jaw clenched. This is Dad's house. Dad's house, she repeated, tilting her head. That he left to me in his will. A will you knew about. He scoffed, shaking his head. You don't deserve it. That's not up to you, she said coolly. Now, I gave you a chance to leave on your own, and you didn't. So now, you don't get a choice. She turned to the locksmith. If he tries to interfere, call the police. Jason's eyes widened slightly, but he quickly masked it with anger. This isn't over, he growled. Claire tilted her head. Oh, it is, Jason. But if you keep pushing, I'll make sure it gets even worse for you. The locksmith finished up, handed Claire her new keys, and nodded. All set, Miss Walker. Jason stood there fuming before finally storming off toward his car. Claire waited, watching until he drove away. Then she stepped inside, closed the door, and locked it behind her. Her house. Her rules. Jason had played his game. Now, it was her turn. The truth about Jason Claire sank into the old armchair in the living room, the weight of the past few days settling in. The house was hers again, but she knew better than to think Jason would let this go. He had always been stubborn, too arrogant to admit when he had lost. But this time, it wasn't just stubbornness, it was desperation, and Claire knew exactly why. Her father's will had been crystal clear. The house, the savings, the estate, all of it went to Claire. Not because she was better than Jason, but because she was the only one who wouldn't burn it all to the ground. Jason had already done that to himself. She sighed, rubbing her temples. Growing up, Jason had always been reckless. But it wasn't until their mother passed that things really spiraled. When she died, she left them each a small inheritance. $200,000. It was supposed to help them start their lives. A safety net. A gift from a mother who had always worried about their future. Claire had saved hers. Jason had spent his within a year. At first it was small. Extravagant vacations, expensive cars, nights out at clubs where he threw money around like it was infinite. But when the fun stopped, when the money ran low, he turned to something worse. Drugs. And just like that, his inheritance was gone. Her father had tried to help him. They all had. Rehab, interventions, financial support. All wasted. Jason would get clean for a few months, swear he was turning his life around, and then, like clockwork, he'd relapse. The last time he did, he stole from their father. $10,000, gone overnight. That was the moment their father finally accepted the truth. I can't give him another chance, Claire, he had said one night, his voice heavy with heartbreak. I won't be around forever. And when I'm gone, if he has control of everything, he'll destroy himself. I won't let that happen. So he didn't. And now, Jason was doing what he always did, trying to take what wasn't his. Claire exhaled sharply, determination settling deep in her bones. Not this time. This time, she wasn't backing down. This time, Jason was going to face the consequences of his choices. She pulled out her phone and dialed Mr. Holloway. Lisa, he greeted, his tone knowing. I take it Jason is still a problem? She let out a humorless laugh. You have no idea, he sighed. I had a feeling this would happen. Your father's will was airtight, but Jason has always been unpredictable. She nodded. He's not going to stop. I need to know my options. You've already taken the right steps, Holloway said. Legally, the house is yours. He has no claim. If he attempts anything else, we can press charges. Claire hesitated before speaking. And what about the money? The $5 million? Holloway's expression didn't change. It's protected. He can't touch it. Not legally. That should have been reassuring. But Claire knew Jason. And when he was desperate, he didn't care about legality. She exhaled, gripping her phone tighter. Jason wasn't done. Not yet. And she had a sinking feeling. The worst was still coming. Breaking point. When desperation turns dangerous. The house was quiet. Claire stood in the living room, running her fingers over the old wooden desk that had once belonged to her father. It still smelled faintly of cedar and the cologne he used to wear. It was hers now. Not just the desk, but everything. The house, the savings, the entire estate. And Jason couldn't stand it. She sighed, sitting down and unlocking her phone. No messages, no missed calls. She hadn't heard from Jason since she'd changed the locks on her house. But silence from Jason was never a good thing. It meant he was planning something. The calm before the storm. For the next few days, Claire allowed herself to relax, just a little. Jason hadn't made a move. Maybe he had finally accepted defeat. Maybe he realized there was nothing left to fight for. She should have known better, because Jason never lost gracefully. And the moment she let her guard down, the storm arrived. A midnight alert. It was 3:12 a.m. when Claire's phone buzzed, pulling her out of sleep. She blinked against the darkness, reaching for it on the nightstand. The notification on her screen sent a chill through her spine. Security alert. Motion detected. Front entrance. Her heart pounded as she opened the app, pulling up the live camera feed. And there he was. Jason. Dressed in dark clothes, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. But what made her stomach twist wasn't that Jason was alone. Because he wasn't. Another man stood beside him, whispering something in his ear. Someone Claire didn't recognize. She knew instantly. This wasn't just some drunken visit, this was a break-in, and Jason had brought backup. Claire gritted her teeth, gripping her phone as she immediately dialed 911. The call that changed everything. 911, what's your emergency? Claire forced her voice to stay steady, despite the way her pulse thundered in her ears. My brother is trying to break into my house, she said quickly. And he's not alone. Are you inside the residence? Yes, doors are locked, but I have security cameras. They're at my front door right now. The dispatcher's voice remained calm. Officers are on their way. Stay on the line with me. Claire's eyes stayed locked on the screen. Jason was gesturing toward the lock, muttering something to his friend. The other man nodded, stepping forward. He pulled something from his pocket. A crowbar. Claire's stomach clenched. They're trying to force their way in, she whispered. Stay calm, ma'am. Do not engage. Officers will arrive shortly. She swallowed, forcing herself to breathe evenly. And then, red and blue lights flashed across the screen. A police car pulled up, tires screeching against the pavement. The second man didn't hesitate. He ran. Jason, however, froze. Two officers stepped out, their voices sharp. Hands where we can see them. Claire exhaled, her grip on the phone loosening. It was over. Or so she thought. Jason's arrest. Claire stood at the front door, watching as the officers pressed Jason against the hood of the police car, cuffing his wrists. His face was a storm of emotions. Shock, fury, disbelief. You called the cops on me? He yelled. Claire crossed her arms. You broke into my house. What did you expect? One of the officers turned to her. Do you want to press charges, ma'am? Jason's cockiness faltered. For the first time, she saw it. The fear in his eyes. He thought she wouldn't do it. He thought she'd let this go. He was wrong. Claire met his gaze, her expression unreadable. Yes, she said simply, I do. Jason's face drained of color. The officers hauled him into the back of the squad car, the door slammed shut. And just like that, Jason had finally lost. The weight of it all, Claire sat at her kitchen table, staring blankly at her coffee cup as the events of the night replayed in her head. Jason was in jail for trying to steal something that was never his to begin with. She should have felt relief, maybe even satisfaction. After all, this was the natural consequence of his choices. But instead, all she felt was exhaustion. Because no matter how much anger she had toward him, no matter how reckless and selfish he had been, there was one undeniable truth she couldn't shake. He was still her brother. And she didn't know how to save him from himself. A call from the other side that afternoon, her phone rang. Inmate call, unknown number. She hesitated. Then slowly she picked up. Lisa. Jason's voice was rough, bitter. You happy now? She exhaled, leaning back in her chair. Mark, she said evenly, you broke into my house. Dad's house, he corrected sharply. Claire closed her eyes, forcing patience into her voice. Dad's house. That he left to me in his will. A will that you knew about. Jason let out a dry laugh. Yeah, I knew Dad screwed me over. Knew he left you everything like I never existed. Claire tightened her grip on the phone. He didn't screw you over, she said quietly. He protected you from yourself. Silence. Then Jason scoffed. Wow, so that's how you see me? Some lost cause? Some addict who can't be trusted? She hesitated. The anger in his voice wasn't just anger, it was pain. You stole from Dad, Jason, she said finally. You lied to him, used him, and when he tried to help you, you turned your back on him. What was he supposed to do? More silence. She could hear his breathing, heavy, uneven. His voice cracked slightly. I just wanted something that was mine. The words hit her harder than she expected, because beneath all of Jason's arrogance, beneath all his rage, his recklessness, there was a lost boy. A boy who had never fully recovered from losing their mother. A boy who had spiraled so far out of control, he couldn't see a way back. Claire swallowed. You need help, Jason. A bitter laugh. I don't need your charity. It's not charity, she said firmly. It's me, your sister, telling you that I don't want to see you destroy yourself. Jason didn't respond, but he didn't hang up either, and somehow that was enough. For now. A choice that could change everything. The dim light from the kitchen barely reached Claire as she sat at the small wooden table, her fingers drumming against the rim of her coffee cup. The silence in the house was deafening. It had been almost 24 hours since Jason had been arrested, and yet his voice still echoed in her mind. You happy now? She exhaled sharply, rubbing her temple. No, she wasn't happy. She wasn't relieved. She was tired. Tired of the chaos, the fights, the endless cycle of Jason making mistakes and expecting someone else to clean them up. And yet, despite everything, she still felt the same nagging guilt that always seemed to follow her when it came to her brother. She knew Jason was reckless. She knew he was selfish. But she also knew something else. He was lost. And for the first time in his life, he was out of moves. Which meant she had to decide, would she let him drown, or would she throw him a lifeline? A meeting with the lawyer. Later that morning, Claire found herself sitting across from Mr. Holloway in his downtown office. The large mahogany desk between them was covered with legal documents, but her eyes remained locked on the older man's calm, calculating expression. You're considering dropping the charges, he said, more statement than question. Claire sighed, crossing her arms. I don't know yet. I don't think jail is going to fix him. Holloway leaned back, studying her. Jail won't fix him, no, but it will hold him accountable. She swallowed. Is there another option? He tapped his pen against a folder before speaking. There is one alternative. You could negotiate a deal. Drop the charges under the condition that he enters a rehabilitation program. Claire frowned. Rehab? Holloway nodded. It's not just about addiction. There are programs that focus on financial literacy, mental health support, and behavioral therapy. If he completes it, he gets a fresh start. If he doesn't, then, well, he faces the full consequences of his actions. Claire exhaled, pressing her fingers against her temples. Would Jason even agree to that? Would he even try? Or would he see it as just another way for her to control him? She wasn't sure. But she had to try. Okay, she said finally. Let's do it. The jailhouse conversation. Later that evening, Claire stepped into the visitor's room at the county jail, her stomach tight with anticipation. Jason was already seated on the other side of the thick glass, his expression unreadable. She picked up the phone. He hesitated, then did the same. You look like hell, she said. Jason let out a dry chuckle. Yeah, well, jail's not exactly a 5-star resort. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Claire spoke. I'm not here to argue, she said. I'm here to give you a choice. Jason scoffed, leaning back in his chair. A choice? Wow, how generous of you. Claire ignored the sarcasm. I can press charges, she said simply. I can let the court decide what happens to you. Or, she paused, choosing her words carefully, you can go to rehab. His expression hardened. No, she sighed. Jason, I'm not doing that, he snapped. I don't need rehab. Claire clenched her jaw. Then what do you need, huh? Another arrest? Another night in a cell? Another excuse to blame me, Dad, the world for your problems? His jaw tightened. I need my family to stop treating me like I'm broken. Her throat tightened. We only treat you that way because you are, she said softly. Jason flinched, looking away. Claire reached into her bag, pulling out a pamphlet, and slid it against the glass. Here, she said. It's your choice. But I need you to understand something, Jason. I'm not abandoning you. I'm not shutting you out. I want to help you, but I can't do that if you refuse to help yourself. Jason stared at the pamphlet for a long time. Then, without a word, he picked it up. The decision 3 days passed. Claire didn't hear from Jason. Part of her expected him to throw the pamphlet away the second she left. Part of her expected to get a call from the lawyer saying Jason refused the deal. But on the 4th day, her phone rang. She stared at the screen. Unknown caller. Her stomach twisted. She hesitated, then answered. Hello? A long pause. Then, I'll do it. She blinked, gripping the phone tighter. You'll do what? Another slow breath. Rehab. Something inside her loosened, an invisible weight she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying. "That's good, Jason," she said softly. "That's really good." He let out a dry laugh. "Don't make a big deal out of it." She didn't push. She knew Jason well enough to know that if she made this moment too emotional, he'd shut down completely. So instead, she simply said, "I'll make the arrangements." The drop-off. A week later, Claire pulled up to the rehab facility. The sprawling building was surrounded by open fields and quiet walking trails. Jason sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window. "This place is fancy," he muttered. "It's one of the best," Claire told him. "They specialize in addiction, financial rehabilitation, and mental health support. They'll help you figure out a plan for when you get out." Jason scoffed. "A plan, right?" Claire parked the car and turned to face him. "Jason, this is your shot," she said firmly. "I need you to take it seriously." He didn't answer. Instead, he just stared at the entrance like it was a prison gate. Finally, he sighed. "I don't know who I am without all the chaos, Claire." Her chest tightened. "Then maybe," she said quietly, "it's time to figure that out." For the first time in years, he really looked at her. Not with anger, not with resentment, but with something almost like regret. Then, without another word, he opened the car door and stepped out. Claire watched as he walked up the steps, her heart hammering in her chest. Would he stay? Would he run? Would he actually try? She didn't know. But at least now, for the first time in a long time, the decision was his. The long road back. The morning sun streamed through Claire's kitchen window as she sipped her coffee, staring at her phone. It had been 3 months since Jason walked into that rehab facility, and until now she hadn't heard a word from him. She wasn't sure what she had expected. Maybe silence forever. Maybe another dramatic phone call blaming her for everything. But then, out of the blue, a text appeared on her screen. "Jason, hey, can we talk?" Claire inhaled deeply, her fingers hovering over the screen. For months, she had been holding her breath, waiting to see if Jason would make it through the program. Now, she finally had an answer. She typed back quickly. "Claire, of course, call me when you're ready." She set her phone down and exhaled. Whatever happened next, she was ready. The first conversation. An hour later, Claire's phone rang. She swallowed her nerves and answered. "Hey," she said. There was silence on the other end. Then finally, Jason let out a slow breath. "Hey." His voice was different, quieter, less sharp around the edges. "You finished the program?" she asked carefully. "Yesterday," he admitted. "I'm out." Claire leaned back in her chair. "How do you feel?" Jason let out a short, humorless chuckle. "Like I just got out of a damn monastery." She smiled slightly, but didn't joke back. "Did it help?" she asked. There was a pause, then a soft, unexpected answer. "Yeah," he said. "I think it did." Something inside her eased, but she stayed quiet, letting him speak. Jason cleared his throat. "I wanted to say thanks for not giving up on me." A lump formed in Claire's throat. "I was really close, Jason," she admitted. "I know." His voice was rough, but there was no anger in it, no resentment, just honesty. "And I don't blame you," he added. "I deserved everything I got. Maybe worse." She didn't argue. Maybe he was right. But that didn't mean she wanted him to suffer. "I'm trying," he said after a moment. "I don't know if I'll ever be normal, but I want to do better." For the first time in years, Claire actually believed him. The second chance. A few days later, they met at a small diner just outside the city. Jason looked different. His face wasn't as hollow, his eyes weren't as wild. He had gained back some weight, his hands were steadier. But more than that, there was something else. Something she hadn't seen in years. Clarity. They sat across from each other, their coffees untouched between them. "So," Jason said, shifting awkwardly. "What now?" Claire exhaled, running a hand through her hair. "That's up to you." He nodded, like he already knew that. "I need a job." That was true. And that's when Claire made the decision she had been debating since the moment he called. "I have one for you," she said. Jason blinked. "What?" She leaned forward. "Dad's house. It's mine, but I don't want to live in it forever. It's too big for just me, but it needs work." His jaw tensed. "You trust me with that?" Claire met his gaze. "Not completely," she admitted, "but I trust that you want to be better, and I think Dad would have wanted you to have a chance to earn something. Not take it, not demand it, but earn it." Jason sat there for a long moment, just staring at her. Then slowly, he nodded. "Okay," he said. It wasn't an apology, it wasn't a promise, but it was a start. And for the first time, Claire let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, Jason could actually change. Rebuilding one brick at a time. Months passed, and Jason stayed true to his word. He worked hard fixing up the house with Claire. At first, they barely spoke. They just worked side by side, painting walls, repairing broken tiles, clearing out old memories. But as time went on, they started talking. About Dad, about Mom, about everything they had lost, and everything they still had. One evening, as they sat on the back porch, Jason finally broke the silence. "I miss them," he admitted. Claire looked over at him. "I hate that I wasted so much time being angry," she swallowed. "Then don't waste any more." He nodded, but she knew it wasn't that simple. Healing wasn't instant. Forgiveness wasn't easy. But they were trying. And for now, that was enough. A new beginning. An unfinished past. The early morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen window as Claire stood at the counter, staring at her coffee. It had been 6 months since Jason finished rehab. 6 months since she took the risk of bringing him back into her life. And surprisingly, he hadn't let her down. Not yet, at least. The house was coming together piece by piece, just like their relationship. Some days, it still felt strange working beside him, talking to him without the weight of anger or disappointment. But for the first time in years, Jason wasn't just existing. He was trying. And that was worth something. Her phone buzzed, pulling her out of her thoughts. A text from Jason. "Jason, hey, I'm picking up supplies later. Need anything?" Claire smiled slightly, typing back. "Claire, just grab more paint rollers. The ones we have are falling apart." It was a simple exchange. Something normal, and for the first time in a long time, normal didn't feel impossible. The unexpected reminder. That afternoon, Claire met Jason at the house, pulling into the driveway as he unloaded supplies from his truck. "Got your rollers," he called, tossing a pack toward her. She caught them, shaking her head. "Try not to sound so proud of yourself." Jason smirked, but didn't say anything. They carried everything inside, placing the paint cans and brushes on the plastic-covered floors. "You ready to do this?" Claire asked, glancing at the living room wall they were supposed to repaint. Jason shrugged. "You're the boss." They worked in silence, the only sounds being the occasional scrape of a brush against the wall and the distant hum of traffic outside. And then, out of nowhere, Jason spoke. "Did you ever find it?" Claire paused mid-stroke, frowning. "Find what?" Jason hesitated. "Dad's letter." Her stomach twisted. She hadn't thought about that in a while. The day after the funeral, their father's lawyer had mentioned a letter, something he had left behind for both of them. But Claire had been too overwhelmed with everything else to go searching for it. And now, standing in the middle of their childhood home, she realized she had never looked. She set down the brush. Jason raised an eyebrow. "Wait, are you serious? You never read it?" Claire exhaled, glancing toward their father's old office. "Come on," she said, already walking toward the room. The words they needed to hear. The office was exactly how their father had left it. Dust had settled on the bookshelves, the scent of aged paper filling the air. Claire ran her fingers over the desk, opening the drawers one by one. Jason leaned against the doorway, watching. "You think it's in there?" "If it exists, it has to be," she muttered. And then, she found it. A sealed envelope, tucked between a stack of old receipts. Her breath caught as she pulled it out. The words for Claire and Jason scrawled across the front in their father's handwriting. Jason stepped forward, eyes locked on the letter. "Do we open it?" he asked, voice quieter than before. Claire swallowed. There was no we about it. This belonged to both of them. She carefully tore the envelope open, unfolding the thick sheet of paper inside. And then, she started reading. "My kids, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And there's a good chance you're sitting in this office, struggling with everything I left behind. I know you both. Claire, you've always been strong. But you carry too much weight on your shoulders. You've spent your whole life trying to fix things that weren't your fault. Don't let my death add to that burden. And Jason, I know you're angry. I know you think I abandoned you. But son, I need you to understand something. I didn't leave you out of my will to punish you. I did it to save you." Jason inhaled sharply beside her. Claire continued, "I've watched you lose yourself too many times. I've watched you fall apart, push people away, make choices that hurt you more than anyone else. But you're still here. And that means you still have time to change. That's why I left everything to Claire. Because she was strong enough to handle it until you were ready. Claire felt her throat tighten. She glanced at Jason, but his eyes were glued to the letter. I don't know if you'll ever understand that. But I hope one day you will. And when that day comes, I want you to know something. You were never less than her. You were just lost. But you can find your way back. I love you both. Take care of each other. Dad. The room was silent. Claire's fingers trembled slightly as she lowered the letter, letting the words settle between them. Jason exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. He really thought I could change, he muttered. Claire swallowed hard, and you did. Jason's eyes met hers. Did I? She nodded. Yeah, she said softly. You did. Moving forward. The next few days felt different. Something had shifted between them. The anger, the resentment, it wasn't gone. But it wasn't winning anymore. One evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, Claire found Jason sitting on the back porch, staring at the sky. She sat beside him. After a long moment, he spoke. I hate that I wasted so much time. Claire exhaled. Then don't waste any more. Jason nodded, and for the first time in years, Claire believed he wouldn't. A new chapter. A week later, Jason knocked on her door, a folded piece of paper in hand. What's that? Claire asked. He handed it to her. She unfolded it, scanning the text. It was a job application. For a construction company? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Jason shrugged. Figured I should put the skills I learned fixing this house to use. Claire smiled. That's a good idea. Jason hesitated. You think I'll actually get it? Claire folded the paper, handing it back to him. I think you'll earn it. Jason smirked. You always gotta make it sound deep, huh? Claire rolled her eyes. Just go apply for the damn job. Jason laughed, shaking his head as he walked toward the door. And as she watched him leave, Claire felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Because maybe, just maybe, this time, Jason wasn't going to fall. Maybe this time, he'd finally figured out how to stand.